Dear students, today we are going to see what is World Wide Web, what is HTTP request and response message, and what are the different types of websites. Consider what is World Wide Web. It is also called as web, or we simply say www. It is a collection of websites or web pages stored in web server and connected to local computers through the internet. These websites contain text pages, digital images, audios, videos, etc. Users can access the content of this site from any part of the world over the internet using their devices, like you can use computers, laptops, your mobiles, etc. www along with the internet enables the retrieval and display of the text and media to your device, right? The building block of the web are web pages which are formatted in HTML and connected by the links, that is called as hypertext, or we say as hyperlinks, and they are accessed by HTTP. These links are electronic connections that link related pieces of information so that users can access the desired information quickly. Hypertext offers the advantages to select a word or phrase from the text and thus to access other pages that provide additional information related to that word or phrase. A web page is given an online address and we say it as URL, or Uniform Resource Locator. A particular collection of web pages that belong to a specific URL is called as a website. For example, when you say www.google.com or www.facebook.com. So the World Wide Web is like a huge electronic book whose pages are stored on multiple servers across the world. Small websites store all of their web pages on a single server, but big websites or organizations place their web pages on different servers in different countries so that when users of a country search their site, they get particular information quickly from the nearest server. So we can see that web provides a communication platform for the users to retrieve and exchange the information over the internet. Now, unlike a book where we move from one page to another in a sequence, on World Wide Web we follow a web of hypertext links to visit a web page and from that web page to move to another web page. So for this purpose, we need a browser like Google Chrome, Firefox, which is installed on your computer for accessing the web. Now consider what is the difference between World Wide Web and Internet. Actually, most of the people use this term interchangeably. They think that they are the same thing, but it is not so. So internet is entirely different from www. It is a worldwide network of devices like computers, laptops, tablets, etc. It enables users to send the email to other users, chat with them online. For example, when you send the email or chatting with someone online, you are using internet. But when you have opened a website like google.com, for example, for your information, so you are using World Wide Web. So is the difference clear? So you can say that World Wide Web is a network of servers over the internet. You request a web page from your computer using a browser and the server renders that page to your browser. Your computer is called as a client who runs a program that is a web browser and asks the other computer, that is server, for the information that it needs. Now consider how World Wide Web operations are performed. So www works on client-server approach. Following steps will explain you how the web works. First of all, user will enter the URL, for example, www.google.com of the web page in the address bar of the web browser. Then browser will request the domain name server for the IP address corresponding to google.com. Now after receiving the IP address, Browser sends the request for web page to the web server using HTTP protocol, which will specify the way the browser and server will communicate. Now the web server receives the request using HTTP protocol, and it will check its search for the requested web page. If found, it will return it back to the web browser and close the HTTP connection. Now web browser receives the web page, it interprets it and displays the contents of web page in web browser window. Before considering what HTTP request and what is HTTP response, consider what is HTTP. So HTTP is a hypertext transfer protocol. It is the most popular application protocol used in the internet. HTTP is asymmetric request response client server protocol. Now what is request response? So for example, client will request the server. For example, client may want some files to be downloaded, or he may ask for some files, and server will give the response to the client. HTTP client sends the request message to HTTP server. The server will give a response. Now, in short, I will say it is a pull protocol. That means client pulls the information from the server. HTTP is a stateless protocol, or you can say that the current request does not know what has been done in the previous request. So it is called as a stateless. HTTP permits negotiating of data type and representation so as to allow systems to be built independently of the data being transferred. It is a generic stateless protocol, as we have seen. It will perform many tasks beyond its use for hypertext. For example, distributed object management systems through extension of its request method, error codes and headers. HTTP messages are how the data is exchanged between server and client. There are two types of messages, that is requests sent by the client to trigger an action on the server, and responses, that is the answer from the server. HTTP messages are composed of textual information encoded in ASCII and span over multiple lines. In HTTP 1.1 version and earlier versions of the protocol, these messages were openly sent across the connection. In HTTP 2, once human readable message is now divided up into HTTP frames, providing the optimization and performance improvements. Web developers craft these textual HTTP messages themselves. They provide HTTP messages through the config files or APIs or other interfaces. Consider about HTTP request. HTTP client sends HTTP request to the server in the form of request message, which includes the following format. First one is request line, then 0 or more header fields followed by CRLF, then empty line, that is a line with nothing preceding the CRLF, which indicates the end of header fields, optionally a message body. The following sections explains each of the entities used in HTTP request message. The first one is request line. The request line begins with method token followed by request URI and the protocol version, ending with CRLF. The elements are separated by space SP characters. For example, request line is equal to method SP request URI SP HTTP version CRLF. So as told, CRLF is just for the termination of the request line. Consider what is request method. So the request method indicates the method to be performed on the resource identified by the given request URI. The method is case sensitive and should always be mentioned in uppercase. The following table lists all the supported methods in HTTP 1.1 version. Consider the method get. So the get method is used to retrieve the information from the given server using a given URI. Request using GET should only retrieve data and should have no other effect on the data. Next method is head. It is same as GET, but it transfers the status line and the header section only. Next is the post method. So the post request is used to send data to the server, for example, customer information, file upload, etc. using HTML forms. Put method replaces all the current representations of the target resource with the uploaded content. Delete method removes all the current representations of the target resource given by URI. Connect. It establishes a tunnel to the server identified by given URI. Options describe the communication options for the target resource. And trace method will perform a message loopback test along with the path to the target resource. Consider now what is request URI. So it is a uniform resource identifier and identifies the resource upon which to apply the request. Following are the most commonly used forms to specify the URI. For example, request URI is equal to star absolute URI, absolute path and authority. Now consider the various methods and their descriptions. The asterisk is used when HTTP request does not apply to particular resource but to the server itself, and it is only allowed when the method used does not necessarily apply to the resource. For example, options star HTTP slash 1.1. Next is the absolute URI. It is used when HTTP request is being made to a proxy. The proxy is requested to forward the request or service from a valid cache and return the response. For example, get http www.w3.org and one path is given. The most common form of request URI is that is used to identify a resource on an original server or gateway. For example, a client wishing to retrieve a resource directly from the origin server would create a TCP connection to port 80 of the host www.w3.org and send the following lines: get slash pub slash www slash project.html http slash 1.1 and host is www.w3.org. Note that the absolute path cannot be empty. If none is present in the origin URI, it must be given as slash, that is the server root. Consider one example of request message. Here we will see the example to form the HTTP request to fetch hello.html page from the web server running on xyz.com. So the first one is get, that is our request line, get slash hello.html http slash 1.1 user agent mozilla slash 4.0 host is www.xyz.com accept languages en slash English US. Accept encoding, gzip, deflect, connection, keep alive. Here we are not sending any request data to the server because we are fetching a plain HTML page from the server. Connection is a general header and the rest of the headers are request headers. Consider about the HTTP responses. After receiving and interpreting a request message, server will respond with the HTTP response message, which consists of a status line, 0 or more header fields followed by CRLF, an empty line, that is a line with nothing preceding the CRLF indicating the end of the header file. Optionally, a message body. The following sections will explain each of the entities used in HTTP response message. So the first one is message status line. A status line consists of the protocol version followed by numeric status code and its associated textual phrase. The elements are separated by space SP characters. The status line, for example, is equal to HTTP version SP status code SP reason phrase CRLF. HTTP version. A server supporting HTTP version 1.1 will return the following version information. HTTP version is equal to HTTP/1.1. Consider what is a status code. So the status code element is a 3-digit integer where first digit of the status code defines the class of response and the last 2 digits do not have any categorization rule. There are 5 values for the first digit. HTTP status codes are extensible and HTTP applications are not required to understand the meaning of all registered status code. So the first code is 1XX, which is informational. It means the request was received and the process is continuing. Second, 2XX, that is success. It means the action was successfully received, understood and accepted. The code 3XX, that is redirection, indicates that the further action must be taken in order to complete the request. 4x's, that is a client error. It means the request contains incorrect syntax or cannot be fulfilled. The code 5xx indicates the server error. It means the server failed to fulfill an apparently valid request. Consider one example of response message. Now here we are putting an HTTP response for a request to fetch the hello.html page from the web server running on xyz.com. HTTP/1.1 200 OK. Date is given, server is given. When it was last modified, that date is given. Content length is 88. Content type text./html and connection closed. Consider a simple program to display the message hello world. Now consider what are the types of websites. So websites are separated into two different types, that is static and dynamic. Static websites are the ones that are fixed and display the same content for every user, usually written exclusively in HTML. A dynamic, on the other hand, is the one that can display different contents and provide user interaction by making use of advanced programming and databases in addition to HTML. So, static websites are easier to create while dynamic websites require more work. Static website is the basic type of website that is easy to create. As we have seen, you don't need the knowledge of web programming and databases design to create a static website. Its web pages are coded into HTML. The codes are fixed for each page, so the information contained in the page does not change and it looks like a printed page. Static websites usually come with fixed number of pages that have a specific layout. When the page runs on a browser, the content is literally static and doesn't change in response to user actions. So as we have seen, static website is usually created with HTML and CSS in simple text editors like Notepad. If you need a website smaller than 3 pages, opting for static website is the proper choice. Building it doesn't take as much time or effort as in case of dynamic websites. If the pages of your website must look different, the HTML code can easily be duplicated on each of the pages containing necessary changes. Consider various features of static website. So static website can be developed in short time as compared to dynamic website. They are economical to develop and it is the best solution for business that runs out of money. The delivering speed of the web server is quick in terms of static websites. Dedicated servers are available at reasonable prices for hosting. Static websites are simple in structure and helps to transfer in short amount of time from server to client with less processing time. They facilitate with version control, which helps to control and store the work and able to recall whenever needed. Now, what is a dynamic website? So, compared to static websites, which are purely informational, a dynamic website is more functional. It allows users to interact with the information that is listed on the page. Of course, that requires utilizing more than just HTML code. Static websites uses only client-side HTML and CSS code, while dynamic websites rely on both client-side and server-side scripting languages like JavaScript, PHP, or ASP. When a user accesses a dynamic website, the site can be changed through code that is run in the browser or on the server. The end result is the same as that on a static website, that is HTML page displayed on the web browser. To generate dynamic content, such websites use a combination of server-side and client-side scripting. Client-side scripting refers to the code that is executed by the browser, usually with the JavaScript. Meanwhile, server-side scripting refers to the code that is executed by the server, that is before the content is sent to the user's browser. Dynamic website is a collection of dynamic web pages whose content changes dynamically. It accesses the content from a database or content management system. Therefore, when you alter or update the contents of the database, the content of the website is also altered or updated. Dynamic websites uses client-side scripting or server-side scripting or both to generate dynamic content. Client-side scripting generates content at the client's computer on the basis of user input. The web browser downloads the web pages from the server and processes the code within the page to render the information to the user. In server-side scripting, the software runs on the server and processing is completed in the server, then plain pages are sent to the user. So as we have seen, dynamic website uses HTML and CSS but includes website scripting as well. It contains information that changes depending on the viewers. Now consider various features of dynamic website. So dynamic designs are integrated with high-end programming that enables in making the changes easily. It has a neat and well-organized web pages. These designs are easier to maintain even though they are loaded with information and graphics. These designs are extremely useful for e-commerce sites and shopping portals as they provide easy navigation through a number of pages. Thus, this enhances the user experience. With an advanced graphics, they lend attractive look for the website. Dynamic websites provide good presentation of contents, designs, and tabs that gives a much sophisticated and professional look to a website.